There are moments in television when everything seems steady on the surface, yet underneath, the pressure is quietly building toward a breaking point. For years, one show had managed to balance entertainment with genuine craftsmanship, earning the trust of viewers who tuned in not just for cars, but for the people behind them. But what happens when the very thing that built that trust begins to shift? When passion meets pressure and authenticity is forced to compete with deadlines. This is the story of a man who stepped into one of the most scrutinized roles in automotive television, proved himself against the odds, and then chose to walk away, not because he couldn't keep going, but because he refused to lose what mattered most. In 2017, the automotive TV world experienced a major shakeup when a longtime and deeply respected mechanic left a show he had helped define for over a decade. His calm, methodical approach and deep technical knowledge had made him a fan favorite, and for many viewers, he wasn't just part of the show, he was the show. Replacing someone like that was never going to be easy. When a new host stepped in, he brought a completely different energy. Confident, skilled, and modern in his approach, he was determined to carry the legacy forward while adding something of his own. But from the very beginning, the reaction was intense. Some fans were open to change, but others resisted immediately, comparing every move to the past and questioning whether anyone could truly fill the role. Despite the skepticism, the new chapter began with cautious optimism. As episodes aired, viewers started to see what he could do. He wasn't trying to imitate anyone. Instead, he focused on craftsmanship, introducing fresh techniques, fabricating parts from scratch, and explaining processes in a way that felt accessible and engaging. Slowly, opinions began to shift. What had started as doubt turned into curiosity, and for some, even appreciation. The chemistry on screen worked, the builds were solid, and it seemed like the show had found its footing again. But what audiences saw on screen was only part of the story. Behind the scenes, the reality was far more demanding. Tight schedules, constant filming, and the pressure to deliver episode after episode left little room for rest. Each project had to be completed within strict timeframes, and that often meant making difficult decisions about what could be done thoroughly and what had to be rushed. For someone who believed in doing things properly, these compromises didn't sit easily. As time went on, differences in approach became more noticeable. One side focused on efficiency, deadlines, and keeping the show moving at a steady pace. The other prioritized detail, precision, and taking the time to ensure every job was done right. Neither perspective was wrong, but they didn't always align. What started as small disagreements gradually became a source of ongoing tension. Decisions about repairs, parts, and methods were no longer just technical. They were influenced by time, budget, and the demands of production. The workload itself was relentless. Long days in the workshop were followed by hours of filming, explanations, and preparation for the next build. Even outside of shooting, there was no real break. Sourcing parts, coordinating logistics, and staying ready for the next project became part of a constant cycle. Over time, the physical and mental strain began to take its toll. It wasn't a lack of skill or dedication that made things difficult, but the pace at which everything had to happen. At the same time, the comparisons never fully disappeared. No matter how well he performed, there were always voices looking back at what came before. Every build, every explanation, every decision was measured against a legacy that had already been firmly established. While he remained respectful and acknowledged the contributions of his predecessor, the weight of those expectations was always present. It created a situation where success wasn't just about doing a good job, it was about proving, repeatedly, that he belonged. As the show continued, additional pressures began to surface. Sponsors, production requirements, and the need to keep the content appealing to a broad audience all influenced how projects were approached. Choices that might have once been purely about what was best for the car now involved considerations beyond the workshop. For someone deeply committed to authenticity, this shift was difficult to ignore. The focus was slowly moving away from pure craftsmanship and towards something more structured, more controlled, and at times more restrictive. The turning point didn't come from a single dramatic moment, but from a buildup of smaller ones. A rushed project here, a compromised decision there, each instance added to a growing sense that things were no longer aligned with the original purpose. Eventually, the gap between what he wanted to do and what the show required became too wide to bridge. It wasn't about conflict or failure. It was about realizing that continuing down the same path would mean giving up something fundamental. When the decision to leave was finally made, it was done quietly. There was no big announcement, no emotional farewell, no attempt to turn it into a spectacle. One day, he was part of the show, and the next, he wasn't. For viewers, the change felt sudden and unexplained. Questions spread quickly, and speculation filled the space left behind. But the reality was much simpler. It was a personal choice, made after careful thought and a clear understanding of what staying would cost. After stepping away, everything changed. Without the constant pressure of production schedules, there was finally room to focus on projects that truly mattered. Instead of working against the clock, there was time to slow down, to pay attention to details, and to build without compromise. New opportunities emerged, including collaborations that allowed creativity to take the lead rather than deadlines. It wasn't about leaving something behind, it was about moving towards something better. On a personal level, the shift brought balance. The intensity of television work gave way to a more controlled and fulfilling pace. The focus returned to what had inspired the journey in the first place, a genuine love for building, creating, and solving problems. Without the need to perform for an audience at every moment, the work became more meaningful, more precise, and ultimately more satisfying. Looking back, there is no bitterness in the story. There is pride in what was accomplished, respect for the experience, and an understanding that not every chapter is meant to last forever. The decision to leave wasn't about escaping something negative. It was about protecting something valuable. It was about recognizing when success starts to come at the cost of passion and having the courage to choose a different path. Today, the focus is no longer on proving anything to anyone. It's on the work itself, on the process, and on the freedom to create without limitations. The lessons learned during those intense years haven't been forgotten. They've simply been reshaped into something more sustainable. And in the end, that quiet decision to walk away became one of the most defining moments of all. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't pushing through the pressure. Sometimes it's knowing when to step back and build a life that truly reflects who you are.